Have you ever wondered if something sitting in your kitchen right now could influence one of the most important biological processes linked to aging, heart disease, diabetes, and even cancer research? It sounds almost too simple to be true. Yet, over the past few decades, scientists have uncovered an extraordinary connection between the foods we eat and the microscopic conversations happening inside our bodies every second. Those conversations involve inflammation, blood vessels, the immune system, and the way cells produce energy. And what researchers discovered challenged decades of conventional thinking. Most people assume food is simply fuel. Calories go in, calories get burned, and that's the end of the story. But evidence now suggests food is also information. Every meal sends signals that may influence thousands of biological pathways. Some of those signals appear to support repair. Others may encourage chronic inflammation when repeated day after day for years. However, that's not the most interesting part. Researchers studying nutrition and disease began noticing something unexpected. In regions where people routinely lived longer and experienced lower rates of chronic illness, the protective effects didn't seem to come from one magic ingredient. Instead, certain foods repeatedly appeared in dietary patterns associated with healthier aging. These foods contain natural compounds that interacted with our biology in fascinating ways. Today, we're exploring one of the most misunderstood topics in nutrition science. You've probably heard dramatic headlines claiming that a certain food can starve cancer or completely eliminate inflammation. Those statements oversimplify an incredibly complex area of research. But beneath those headlines lies something genuinely remarkable. Scientists have been uncovering evidence that some foods may influence the environment in which our cells function, including processes related to inflammation, immune activity, and the growth of blood vessels. Understanding what that research actually shows and what it doesn't could change the way you think about every meal. To appreciate why this matters, we first need to understand inflammation. The word itself often sounds negative, but inflammation isn't the enemy. In fact, without it, we couldn't survive. Imagine cutting your finger while preparing dinner. Within moments, your immune system begins coordinating an intricate response. Blood vessels widen, specialized immune cells arrive, damaged tissue is cleared away, repair begins. This is acute inflammation, and it's one of the body's greatest survival mechanisms. The problem arises when that emergency response never fully turns off. Instead of responding to an injury for a few days, the immune system remains slightly activated for months or even years. This persistent, low-grade inflammation is far less noticeable. It doesn't usually cause immediate pain. You may feel perfectly normal. Yet evidence suggests this chronic inflammatory state is associated with many conditions that become more common with age. Researchers have linked persistent inflammation with cardiovascular disease, metabolic dysfunction, joint problems, cognitive decline, and several other chronic health conditions. It's not necessarily the sole cause of these diseases, but it appears to be an important piece of a much larger puzzle. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. For years, many scientists searched for medications capable of controlling chronic inflammation without disrupting the body's normal healing processes. While important advances have been made, researchers also noticed something intriguing in large population studies. People who consistently consume diets rich in vegetables, fruits, legumes, nuts, seafood, herbs, spices, and minimally processed foods often showed lower levels of certain inflammatory markers compared with people consuming highly processed dietary patterns. Why would food make such a difference? Because many natural foods contain thousands of biologically active compounds that work together in ways scientists are still trying to understand. Take colorful berries as an example. Their vibrant blues, reds, and purples aren't simply attractive. Those colors come from plant compounds called anthocyanins. Laboratory research suggests these molecules possess antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. Human studies indicate that regularly consuming berries as part of a balanced diet may support vascular health and healthy aging, although the magnitude of benefit varies between individuals. But berries are only one chapter of a much larger story. Consider extra virgin olive oil. For generations, people living around the Mediterranean consumed it almost daily. Long before scientists understood why, these populations attracted attention because many experienced relatively low rates of cardiovascular disease compared with countries consuming more saturated fats and heavily processed foods. Eventually, researchers isolated several fascinating compounds found in high quality olive oil, including polyphenols that appear to interact with inflammatory pathways. Some studies suggest these compounds may help support healthy blood vessel function and reduce oxidative stress. Yet researchers emphasize that the benefits are most consistently observed when olive oil is part of an overall healthy dietary pattern rather than viewed as a standalone solution. That distinction is incredibly important. Our bodies don't respond to isolated nutrients in the same way they respond to complete dietary patterns developed over months and years. Yet the real discovery came years later. Scientists began examining not only inflammation, but also something called angiogenesis. At first glance, the word sounds intimidating, but the concept is surprisingly straightforward. Angiogenesis simply refers to the formation of new blood vessels. This process is essential throughout life. Growing children need it. Wounds require it to heal. Even healthy tissues depend on carefully regulated blood vessel growth. The challenge comes when angiogenesis becomes imbalanced. Researchers have observed that excessive or abnormal blood vessel growth is associated with several diseases, while insufficient blood vessel growth may contribute to others. The body constantly works to maintain balance between these opposing forces. This balance captured the attention of physician scientists, including Dr. William Li, whose work has helped popularize the concept that nutrition may influence biological systems involved in angiogenesis. It's an exciting area of research, but also one frequently misunderstood online. When people hear phrases like starving cancer, they often imagine that eating one particular food somehow cuts off a disease completely. That's not what the evidence supports. Instead, laboratory studies and ongoing research suggest that certain naturally occurring compounds found in foods may influence biological pathways involved in blood vessel regulation. Scientists continue investigating how these findings translate into real-world human health, recognizing that nutrition is only one factor among genetics, lifestyle, environment, medical care, and many other influences. That nuance matters because good science rarely produces simple answers. Still, the discoveries remain fascinating. One food repeatedly appearing in this research is the humble tomato. Most people think of tomatoes simply as salad ingredients or pizza toppings, yet tomatoes contain lycopene, a natural pigment responsible for their rich red color. Research suggests lycopene may possess antioxidant activity and could help support cardiovascular health. Interestingly, cooked tomato products often make lycopene more available for absorption than raw tomatoes, especially when consumed with healthy fats like olive oil. Suddenly, a traditional Mediterranean meal begins to look less like coincidence and more like a carefully assembled collection of complementary nutrients. But researchers didn't stop there. Green tea attracted enormous scientific interest after population studies noticed differences in disease patterns among communities where tea consumption was common. Scientists identified compounds known as catechins, particularly EGCG, which demonstrated intriguing biological activity in laboratory experiments. Human research remains more mixed, but evidence suggests that regular green tea consumption may support metabolic health and cardiovascular function as part of an overall healthy lifestyle. Notice the recurring pattern. Not miracle, not magic, not overnight transformation. Instead, small biological influences repeated consistently over decades. That perspective completely changes how we think about nutrition. Imagine two people making nearly identical food choices every day for 30 years. The differences between individual meals might appear insignificant, but if those meals repeatedly influence inflammation, blood sugar regulation, vascular function, and overall dietary quality, even modestly, the cumulative effects could become meaningful over time. Scientists increasingly describe health as a result of countless small interactions rather than one dramatic event. And perhaps nowhere is this more evident than inside the gut. Few scientific discoveries have transformed nutrition research more than the growing understanding of the gut microbiome. Inside your digestive system live trillions of microorganisms representing hundreds of different species. Collectively, they help digest food, produce important compounds, interact with the immune system, and communicate with organs throughout the body. What's remarkable is how quickly these microbial communities respond to diet. Research indicates that diets rich in fiber, from vegetables, fruits, beans, lentils, whole grains, nuts, and seeds, tend to support greater microbial diversity. Many beneficial bacteria ferment fiber into short-chain fatty acids, compounds that scientists believe may help support intestinal health and influence immune regulation. Meanwhile, dietary patterns consistently high in ultra-processed foods and low in fiber may shift the microbial ecosystem in less favorable directions. Again, this doesn't happen because one meal changes everything. It's the repeated pattern that matters. And this is where another surprising discovery emerges. Many of the world's healthiest traditional diets don't eliminate entire food groups or depend on expensive supplements. Instead, they emphasize diversity. Different plants contain different phytochemicals, different fibers nourish different microbial species. Different colors often represent different families of beneficial compounds. In other words, variety itself may be an overlooked nutritional strategy. Think about a plate filled with leafy greens, bright orange carrots, deep purple berries, tomatoes, herbs, mushrooms, legumes, nuts, and extra virgin olive oil. Each food contributes its own collection of vitamins, minerals, fibers, and plant compounds. Rather than acting alone, these components may complement one another in ways researchers are only beginning to understand. However, there's another layer to this story that most people never hear about. It's not only what you eat, it's what those foods replace. When someone adds more vegetables, legumes, fruit, and healthy fats to their diet, they're often naturally reducing highly processed snacks, sugar-sweetened beverages, and foods high in refined starches and unhealthy fats. Part of the observed health benefit may come from the protective foods themselves. Part may come from eating less of foods associated with poorer health outcomes. Science often reveals that both processes happen simultaneously. This helps explain why nutrition research can sometimes appear confusing. People frequently search for one superhero food. Researchers keep finding that the bigger picture matters even more. If there's one lesson that keeps emerging from decades of nutrition research, it's that our bodies respond to patterns far more than isolated moments. One healthy meal won't transform your future overnight. Likewise, one indulgent dessert won't determine your destiny. What appears to matter most is the accumulation of choices made over months, years, and decades. And this is where the science becomes even more fascinating. Researchers studying healthy aging have discovered that inflammation, metabolism, blood vessel health, immune function, and the gut microbiome are not separate systems working independently. They're deeply interconnected. A change in one can influence many others. Think of the body as a vast orchestra. Every instrument has its own role, but beautiful music only emerges when they play in harmony. Nutrition appears to help support that harmony by providing the raw materials and biological signals that allow these systems to function together. This helps explain why scientists are increasingly interested in dietary patterns rather than individual nutrients. Take legumes, for example. Beans, lentils, and chickpeas have been staples in traditional diets around the world for centuries. They're rich in fiber, plant protein, minerals, and numerous phytochemicals. Studies have associated higher legume consumption with improved metabolic health, better blood sugar regulation, and support for heart health when included as part of an overall balanced diet. What makes legumes particularly interesting is how slowly they're digested compared to many refined carbohydrates. This slower digestion may help promote steadier blood sugar responses, which in turn may reduce repeated metabolic stress over time. But researchers later discovered something surprising. The benefits weren't limited to blood sugar alone. The fiber in legumes also feeds beneficial gut bacteria, leading to the production of short chain fatty acids that scientists believe may influence inflammation, immune signaling, and even communication between the gut and the brain. In other words, a simple bowl of lentil soup may be supporting multiple biological systems at the same time. That idea would have seemed almost unbelievable only a few decades ago. Today, it's becoming one of the most exciting frontiers in nutrition science. Another food that repeatedly appears in longevity research is the humble mushroom. Although often overlooked, many edible mushrooms contain unique compounds, including beta-glucans and antioxidants, that researchers continue investigating for their potential effects on immune function and overall health. Different varieties offer different nutritional profiles, reminding us once again that diversity on the plate may provide advantages beyond what any single food can offer. Then there are leafy green vegetables: spinach, kale, arugula, Swiss chard, and similar greens provide vitamins, minerals, nitrates, fiber, and numerous plant compounds. Dietary nitrates found naturally in vegetables may support healthy blood vessel function by contributing to the body's production of nitric oxide, a molecule that helps blood vessels relax and maintain healthy circulation. Healthy circulation becomes increasingly important as we age because every organ depends on a reliable supply of oxygen and nutrients. The brain, the heart, the muscles, the kidneys, every one of them relies on an intricate network of healthy blood vessels. And that brings us back to angiogenesis. As researchers continue studying blood vessel biology, they emphasize that the goal is not simply more blood vessels or fewer blood vessels. The goal is balance. The body constantly adjusts this process according to changing needs, and scientists are exploring how lifestyle factors, including nutrition, may support these normal regulatory systems. This balanced perspective is essential because biology is rarely about extremes. The same lesson applies to antioxidants. For years, antioxidants were promoted almost as magical molecules capable of preventing nearly every disease. Later research painted a much more nuanced picture. Scientists now believe that the body's own antioxidant systems are remarkably sophisticated. Rather than relying solely on supplements, many researchers encourage obtaining antioxidants through whole foods, where they exist alongside fiber, vitamins, minerals, and thousands of other naturally occurring compounds that may work together. This concept is often called the food matrix. It's one reason why eating an orange isn't exactly the same as taking vitamin C alone. It's why blueberries provide more than anthocyanins. It's why tomatoes offer more than lycopene. Whole foods contain extraordinarily complex combinations that researchers are still working to understand. However, that's not the only misconception surrounding inflammation. Many people assume inflammation depends entirely on food. In reality, diet is just one piece of a much larger picture. Sleep quality matters, physical activity matters, stress management matters, smoking status matters, alcohol consumption matters. Maintaining a healthy body weight may also play an important role, as excess body fat, particularly around the abdomen, is associated with higher levels of chronic low-grade inflammation. This means someone eating an excellent diet but sleeping only 4 hours a night and remaining chronically stressed may not experience the same overall health benefits as someone who addresses multiple lifestyle factors together. The body responds to the combination of habits, not isolated actions. Exercise offers one of the clearest examples of this principle. At first, it may seem strange that physical activity temporarily increases certain inflammatory signals immediately after a challenging workout. But researchers have found that this short-term response is very different from chronic inflammation. During recovery, the body adapts by becoming stronger and more resilient. Over time, regular physical activity is associated with lower levels of chronic inflammation and improved metabolic health. It's another reminder that context changes everything. The same biological process can be beneficial in one situation and problematic in another. That brings us to one of the biggest questions people ask. If certain foods appear beneficial, should we simply eat as much of them as possible? Research suggests the answer is usually no. More isn't always better. Nutrition repeatedly rewards balance over excess. A diet consisting entirely of one so called superfood would likely become nutritionally incomplete very quickly. Instead, evidence consistently supports variety, moderation, and long term consistency. Interestingly, many of the world's longest living populations seem to have discovered this long before modern nutrition science existed. Whether researchers examined parts of the Mediterranean, Okinawa, or other regions associated with exceptional longevity, common themes emerge. Meals emphasize minimally processed foods. Plants play a central role. Healthy fats are included. Legumes appear frequently. Highly processed foods are relatively uncommon. Meals are often shared socially. Daily movement is built into life rather than treated as a separate event. Scientists continue debating exactly which factors matter most, but together they create a lifestyle pattern associated with healthier aging. And perhaps that's the most powerful lesson of all. Longevity isn't usually built through dramatic interventions. It's built through ordinary decisions repeated consistently. Choosing fruit instead of candy more often, adding vegetables to lunch, replacing refined grains with whole grains when practical, cooking with extra virgin olive oil instead of heavily processed fats, including beans in weekly meals, drinking water instead of sugary beverages, walking after dinner, sleeping a little longer, managing stress more effectively. Each decision may seem almost insignificant on its own, but biology keeps score. Every day, your immune system responds to your environment. Your gut microbes respond to your meals. Your blood vessels respond to your activity. Your metabolism responds to your habits. None of these responses determine your future by themselves. Together, however, they help shape the trajectory of your health over time. This is why so many scientists encourage thinking less about dieting and more about creating sustainable eating patterns. Temporary changes often produce temporary results. Lasting habits have a much greater opportunity to influence long-term health. It's also worth remembering that nutrition science continues to evolve. Researchers are constantly discovering new compounds in foods, new interactions between the microbiome and the immune system, and new insights into how genetics may influence individual responses to diet. What works exceptionally well for one person may not produce identical results for another. Age, medications, medical conditions, physical activity, sleep, and genetics all contribute to individual differences. That's why personalized nutrition is becoming an increasingly important area of scientific investigation. But despite these individual differences, several themes remain remarkably consistent across thousands of studies. Eat more whole foods, prioritize plants, choose a wide variety of colors, limit ultra-processed foods, maintain a healthy lifestyle beyond nutrition alone, and be patient. The body often changes slowly. Many of the biological processes associated with healthy aging unfold over years rather than weeks. That's not a reason for discouragement. It's actually empowering because it means today's choices still matter. Whether you're 35, 50, 65, or well into your 70s, your body continues responding to the signals you provide. Every balanced meal is another opportunity to nourish your cells. Every walk is another opportunity to support your cardiovascular system. Every good night's sleep is another opportunity for repair. Every healthy habit becomes part of a much larger story. So, can one food truly stop inflammation or starve cancer? The scientific answer is more thoughtful than the headline. No single food has been shown to eliminate chronic inflammation or treat cancer on its own. Cancer is a complex group of diseases that requires appropriate medical evaluation and treatment. Likewise, inflammation is an essential biological process that becomes problematic mainly when it remains chronically dysregulated. What the evidence does suggest is something both more realistic and, in many ways, more inspiring. A dietary pattern rich in vegetables, fruits, legumes, whole grains, nuts, seeds, mushrooms, herbs, spices, healthy fats like extra virgin olive oil, and other minimally processed foods may help support the body's normal inflammatory balance, cardiovascular health, metabolic function, and overall well being as part of a healthy lifestyle. That's not a miracle. It's not an overnight transformation. It's the cumulative power of biology responding to consistent, evidence informed choices. And perhaps that's the most hopeful message modern nutrition science has to offer. The decisions we make today may seem small: choosing colorful foods, staying active, getting enough sleep, and building healthy routines rarely feels dramatic in the moment. But over years and decades, those everyday choices may influence how we age, how energetic we feel, and how long we maintain our independence and quality of life. That's why understanding the science matters, not because it promises perfection, but because it gives us practical ways to support our health, one decision at a time.